developing leaders and acting on important issues for over 10 years. I know Carol as a woman of intelligence and grace whose leadership talents have greatly benefited our city. Carol is especially skilled at empowering others to become leaders. Recently, she and her fiancé purchased their first home, and they'll be married by Todd in May. The title of her sermon is Relational Meetings, Acts of Social Justice. Carol.
Good morning. And again, thank you so much. So beautiful. I got to hear it twice. The Spokane Alliance is a local nonprofit and nonpartisan organization whose purpose is to develop leaders and organize through them their institutions for social justice. The Unitarian Church is a key member of this organization. My goal this morning is to give you a better sense of the Spokane Alliance and lay out a cornerstone of our work, relational meetings, the key tool that helps us act on our values and create social justice. Thank you for inviting me to speak this morning. Many of you probably think of organizing as the work about bringing about a more just society, and it is. But it's also about something more profound and spiritual. Making the world a better place, not just and about through issue campaigns. Organizing is also about creating a space for people to understand themselves, to act on their hopes and their fears, engaging them in public life, and building relationships with people that aren't just like you. This is transformational. How do we in our institutions make our values more pronounced in the world? How do we think about our lives together in society? How do we push society to change? Good organizing gets us thinking more deeply about ourselves, our institutions, and the world that we want to live in. Organizing pushes us to change along with society. The most fundamental and radical thing we do as a part of our culture inside the Spokane Alliance are relational meetings. The purpose of a relational meeting is to initiate a relationship with another person and explore their motivations, where you understand each other, connect, and figure out what makes that person tick. What do they care most about, and why do they care about it? By doing relational meetings, we change other people and also change ourselves. Here's an example of a recent experience I had with a relational meeting. A student sat in my class. She always gave off a vibe of, I'm listening, I'm absorbing, I'm also testing to see if this and you are real. I called her up to see if she'd do a relational meeting with me. She agreed. When I asked her to meet, I saw a little sparkle flash in her eye that I had not yet seen. We met for about 25-30 minutes. I asked her why she's in the program she's in. I asked her where she gets her motivation from, what she wants to do with it. I also asked her about that edge I felt from her in class. I took a calculated risk and asked, where does that come from? She had a clear answer. She said, I'm Mexican American. I'm the first person in my family to go to college. I'm going against the grain of my family. They expect me to be married with kids, but I want to further my education and do something that matters in the world. I asked her if there was one thing you could focus on right now that would give you meaning, what would it be? She said, I'm angered by the lack of diversity on campus and want to create opportunities for minorities to further their education. I shared with her a bit about me. I told her that in my last year of college, I was really frustrated and I was having a hard time finding true meaning and joy in life. My day-to-day activities made me angry at society and ultimately depressed. I didn't feel like people really cared. It wasn't until I started working as an assistant to an art therapist, my world became bigger. We were working with people that were coming to a soup kitchen that needed an outlet. This experience changed the track of my life. My student was surprised. We began to build some trust. This exchange was a part of a relational meeting. It was profound. I had no idea that that is what she was interested in and where that interest came from. It took 30 minutes of an intentional conversation to get there. Since then, we've brainstormed together on how she can best act on her passions. That first sparkle I saw in her eye, I realized was recognition, being seen. Not many people, classmates, or professors knew her story, her motivations, or her hopes. Being known in this way as a whole person is quite powerful. Good relational meetings slow me down. They get me out of my head and bring me into a more worldly and personally unique perspective. I become more attentive to the richness of people's lives, the possibilities in acting on what's most important to each of us. Relational meetings get me to pay attention to what's around me in a more meaningful way. I see people with an open mind. I've trained myself to suspend judgment and know all people have a story that's worth hearing. I see relational meetings as religious acts. Relational meetings have changed me. Not only have I learned about so many other people, built deep, great, wonderful public relationships, I've helped others act on what they care about, but I have also grown and stretched myself in the process. A recent conversation really stirred me. I had a relational meeting with a colleague from Washington, D.C. He asked me a powerful question about my family, faith, and my upcoming wedding. No one had been that curious and direct with me, especially about my faith. His questions, our conversation, challenged me in a healthy way. The agitation he mustered provoked me. It got me moving on an interest of mine that I hadn't yet faced. When I returned to Spokane, I was motivated to face part of me that I hadn't in a while, but that needed my attention. I became inspired and set myself on a trajectory of meeting with clergy about faith and their journey. I started asking questions I had never allowed myself to ask church leaders before. I began to feel comfortable in a place where I had never felt comfortable. This has enriched my life. A relational meeting stirred me enough to encourage me to change and grow myself. Good relational meetings can do that. Spokane Alliance's purpose is to continually be developing a broad-based, civic-led, powerful organization that develops leaders and organizes for social justice. Organizations are members. You, the Spokane Unitarian Universalist Church, is a member. The Spokane Education Association, the Firefighters Local Union, St. Anne's Catholic Church, SEIU unions that represent home health care workers, nurses, and custodians, Westminster United Church of Christ, a health equity-focused student group on WSU campus, among many others, are all members. We are an organization-based nonprofit because there is the potential to work with hundreds of more people this way. We organize organizations because these institutions, faith, unions, and civic organizations, are key institutions in our community that help form the way that people engage with and interpret life. They are foundational to the development of people and hold values that are important to the rest of society. But many of them are also at risk of losing membership and/or dues, or have lost the relevancy they once held in society. Through organizing, we believe that we can rebuild them and also build new organizations that can play a similar role. I've been the organizer for the Spokane Alliance for the past 4 years. I moved here from Baltimore, Maryland, where I was organizing with an affiliated organization to Spokane Alliance. We are a part of a large worldwide network called the IAF, or Industrial Areas Foundation. Saul Alinsky created the IAF in the 1940s in the backyards of both Kodak and a large meat packing plant. So big industry in Chicago, hence the name Industrial Areas Foundation. Who here knows about the IAF or has heard of Saul Alinsky? All right. So we have built about 75 organizations across the world. 50 of them are in the United States. The rest are in Great Britain, Germany, Australia, Canada, and New Zealand. The Spokane Alliance is a part of the fastest growing regional network. And we started with Spokane, Edmonton, and Portland in 2002. This region, has helped build new affiliates in Seattle, Tacoma, Vancouver, BC, Calgary, Alberta, Brisbane and Sydney, Australia, and most recently to include a very diverse organization in New Zealand. We also have strong interest from groups of organizations in Victoria, BC, the Tri-Cities, and Missoula, Montana. I want to note that since the Spokane Alliance was one of the first IAF organizations in the region, Spokane's stories and growing track record were a major part of this inspiration and growth, and we should be proud for that. Yeah. Thank you. All affiliates are similarly structured and operate on shared principles and practices. They are all small-staffed organizations of 1 to 4 people. And clearly, the IAF has grown and developed over the years, but at the core of it are 3 main focuses that have stayed the same. First is people. We listen to the people inside our member organizations and ask, what's important in your life? What are your hopes and fears? And what do you want to act on the most? We focus on developing leaders and building diverse relationships. Second is power. We define power as the ability to act. And we need to be able to create change and more social justice. In order for us to do this, we need power, so we can confront and negotiate those that make decisions and are calling the shots. Third is results. We organize around issues to make change. We focus on what is clear, concrete, and winnable. We won't take on world hunger, but we will take on sick and safe leave, so that people living paycheck to paycheck have more flexibility in how they are able to take care of themselves and their family. We want to make change, so we're calculated with the issues we take on, measuring how much capacity and ability we have against how much we'll need to be successful. Together, our fellow IAF organizations have taken on countless issues over the years. Just to name a few are public school funding, racial profiling, green youth jobs, safe guns, living wages, affordable housing, building day shelters for the homeless, and most recently in Spokane, we passed a sick and safe leave ordinance and also expanded opportunities for higher education through an apprenticeship and local hire ordinance. All of these wins started with personal stories we heard in relational meetings. Currently, the Spokane Alliance is working on one of its most ambitious campaigns with the Sound Alliance and other partners in a statewide campaign called Building a Better Washington. We are holding a meeting here at your church on April 3rd, which Jim Lee mentioned. The Building a Better Washington campaign's purpose is to illuminate through personal experience how each of our lives have been impacted based on state funding, such as the quality of our public schools and mental health services, or state parks and fire service. We'll teach what's happening with the state budget and its requirement to fully fund public education, identify solutions that complement our values, and then organize enough people to be able to make change so that no important services are cut and our state doesn't become even more regressive with our tax structure. This is a big campaign. And one of the major challenges we have is getting people over their distrust of government, to believe that they can hold government accountable. But I have a short story of hope that reminds us about the importance of agency and being able to hold officials accountable. It also illustrates the value of being relational and relational organizing to help us focus where our tax dollars go. One of our top leaders accepted the challenge to attend our internationally recognized leadership training. Upon her arrival back in town, we set up a relational meeting. We sat down in her office and began talking. I realized she was not really engaged in the conversation, and I wasn't feeling energized. I took a moment to think, what am I doing wrong? What could I do differently? I realized I was asking questions to Lindsay about programs, clubs, and operations. I wasn't asking about her. I smoothly moved the conversation to focusing on her as the subject of the meeting. Everything changed. I learned that she's feeling worn out, and there was one thing she wanted to try as a school principal that she felt like could help strengthen this elementary school. Teach relational meetings to the teachers and the staff, and create a 3-month campaign for school staff to have at least 60 relational meetings with parents. Not conferences about their children, but meetings with parents about who they are and what they want to do with their life as a parent, as a community member. This intention, this act, began to shift the culture of the school. This was the foundation that gave them the capacity to make large change. This work of relational meetings with parents moved us into a larger campaign and effort to secure funding for major school improvements in their school and also across the city. This relational organizing strengthened the school and its culture. They organized their people and in turn gained power, and used it to help state officials focus where our tax dollars should go. The Unitarian core team has gone through relational meeting training side by side with countless faith, union, and school leadership. Ideally, every Spokane Alliance member organization has a core team, which is a core group of people who have two-pronged focus: to be the conduit and represent their larger organization at Spokane Alliance functions, and to identify and bring back key universals and tools the Alliance teaches and uses that has the potential and power to help strengthen each member organization. Your core team leadership, along with many others across the world, have identified that relational meetings, if practiced inside their institution, could help strengthen their culture and relationships, and in turn build power to act on issues of your members' concern. Relational meetings help weave the fabric of a community. They build power just by the very nature of tying us closer together. We're trying to move the needle on issues of social justice and make concrete change, but we also want to shift the culture of our society to be more relational, inclusive, understanding, and able to have civil conversations with people that we may not agree with, but yet can find an underlying common connection. The more we understand each other and trust each other, the more possibilities we have to act on what's most important. If you're interested in getting involved, learning more about this lens in which we operate, and building relationships with people from other faith institutions, professions, nonprofits, and unions, you have a great opportunity coming up. Our next local leadership training is on May 4th and 11th, and it'll be here at the Unitarian Church. This is free for all Spokane Alliance members, which means you. We have flyers in the back, and you can talk to any of the core team leaders if you're interested. And core team leaders, could you just raise your hands? Thank you. We can change the world, and it begins right here. In 75 years of organizing experience, and through 75 organizations across the globe, we have found nothing more meaningful, effective, and foundational than the practice of one-to-one relational meetings. Each meeting creates a space for individual growth and transformation. They are rich and enjoyable experiences. Combined with the collective energy from hundreds of relational meetings, breaks down prejudices, reinvigorates values-based institutions, and leads to actions that transforms both our cities and states. This church has already been a part of that in a big way here in Spokane. We still have a long way to go, and I'm excited to travel with you on this journey to a more just and equitable world. Thank you for having me.
The author of the testimonial in your order of service is Magdalene, and she's back at the Alliance core team table. You may want to take a minute to stop by and say hello to her. Hi, I'm Jerry White, and in 2014, Marilyn